Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everybody. Today, my guest is sports writer and professor of American Studies, Łukasz Muniowski from Poland. He teaches in the university at Stettin, Poland. And today we'll talk about something pretty strange and pretty new. We have, as you probably know, as if you are sports fans, we have two 3-on-3 basketball leagues that are going on in this last years. One of them is the BIG3, owned by rapper Ice Cube, and it's mainly for retired NBA players. And this year another league started called Unrivaled for active WNBA players. And these two leagues, being 3-on-3, use different rules than the NBA or FIBA. Therefore, Łukasz and I today will be talking about what these two leagues have to teach to the NBA and FIBA basketball. Thanks for your time, Łukasz. Thanks for joining me today with this crazy topic I came up with.
Hi, Leonardo. Thank you for having me. And I'm really happy that we can meet again and we can again talk about basketball, which is a thing that is dear to both of us. And I'm guessing that at least some of your listeners and viewers as well. So
I hope so.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, because I forgot to mention that this is not the first time you're here. This is the second time around.
Yeah.
Because I had you last summer to talk about the history of the Vancouver Grizzlies, short-lived franchise. Łukasz, before we start, would you like to explain again, my viewers, who you are, what's your background in sports writing, or whatever you feel is relevant?
Okay, so as you've said, I'm the assistant professor of American Studies at the University of Stettin, which you so nicely pronounced, and congrats for that. And I wrote a couple of books on basketball as well. My most recent book was actually about Jerry Krause, and currently I'm working on a book on Caitlin Clark, still looking for a publisher. Wink, wink, nod, nod. And I actually have one of books which may be relevant for a discussion with me. It's the three-pointer, the history of the three-point shot in the NBA. And I reread it again. I also reread some other books that I have here that I can also recommend for people who are interested in like the history of the game and how it developed and how things that may be relevant for the present day basketball, how they can be seen from a historical perspective, because the things that you propose that we're gonna talk about in a moment, no spoilers, were so things that are natural for us, like the three-point shot or even the jump shot, were actually met with significant skepticism initially. And some of the ideas that we're going to discuss today may be treated with skepticism as well, but hopefully we might come to a conclusion that maybe they aren't that bad. I don't know. We'll see where our talk goes. So, yeah.
So these two leagues are fun to watch, to start. And the fact that they play when the big counterpart is not playing, because the big three, that is for male athletes, is playing when the NBA is off, and Unrivaled is playing when WNBA is off, makes them pretty, something fresh, something new, something fun to watch. And I guess you've been watching both of them recently in the last years at least.
Yeah, same as you. And I don't know, I don't know about you, but what you already said about the big three is it's sort of its biggest selling point, but maybe seen as its biggest weakness as well, because you said that the big three is mostly or concerns mostly players who are no longer playing professional 5-on-5 basketball. So we have the nostalgia factor here. And I'm interested in your opinion. Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing that we have players who are, well, like the thing that you might take away from it, that some fans might take away from it, is that players who are no longer capable of playing to the best of their abilities, but similarly, you are like factoring in nostalgia from basketball fans, such as I'm guessing you and myself, like when Big Three launched, and I'm sorry if I'm being all over the place, but when the Big Three launched, you had guys like Jason Williams
Yeah.
and Allen Iverson. You had the promise of them playing. They obviously ended up not playing all that much. Instead, we got to see guys like, I don't know, Corey Maggette, who are like, well, with like no disrespect to them, because every player who made the NBA is worthy of a place in the league and is like way better than 99.999% of the world's population in basketball. But like when you were tuning in to watch the NBA, you weren't tuning in to watch such players. Yet we ended up watching such athletes. And I want to ask you, do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing that those are players who are perceived as retired NBA players rather than like active NBA players?
Well, I have to admit that there are different aspects to it because, as you mentioned, the fact that these guys are retired makes the game slower, but also to a certain degree more physical. Because what we've seen in the NBA in recent years is that it's very fast-paced, but actually no one is crashing the boards anymore, as we
Yeah.
used to say in the 90s. Okay. Well, they have to do it in Big Three, of course, for two reasons. First of all, because they are playing half court. And the second thing is that these guys are retired. They are, older than professional NBA active players. Indeed, if you watch Unrivaled, which is for active players, the pace is incredible because they play full court and it's so fast because these girls can run. And I would tell you something that is probably surprising. What I find more fascinating about the nostalgia effect of Big Three is not the players, but the coaches. Because you have Gary Payton coaching, you have Lisa Leslie coaching, you have so many great coaches who were great professional basketball players that, to be honest with you, I'm more into the coaches than into the players.
In Can you tell me more on that? Because I'm actually intrigued by that. Meaning, how are they able to see the game now that they're retired, or just seeing them sort of direct traffic and
Just
give
seeing them
instructions?
direct the traffic.
Okay,
I
okay.
remember that the only one last year who was having an argument with the ref was Gary Payton.
Obviously,
And
I mean, who else,
yeah, who
right?
else? Not the players, the coach.
Yeah.
And, on the other side of the discussion, Lisa Leslie is so classy that you don't see that kind of class in the NBA or anything because she's one and unique. And so I agree with you about the nostalgia, but I would say that I'm more fascinated by the coaches than by the players. Of course, you have great players there as well, and some of them were not even great NBA players. Like they were average NBA players, so to say. Um,
But they were
but
still great basketball players. Let's just stress that. Like incredible basketball players. Just in the NBA, when it comes to talent, they were seen as average NBA players. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely right. So one thing I love about these two leagues, both of them, and I think that this is the most important lesson that we can take from there, is the target score endings, because that is also called elam ending. And this is not the first time we actually see that, because it was tested a few years ago in the NBA All-Star Game, and also the G League used it for 1 year for games going to extra time. So what happens is that in the Big Three, the teams that reaches 50 points first wins. And in Unrivaled, it's a little bit more complex than that. You have three quarters with countdown clock. And at the end of the third quarter, the team that makes 11 points extra rather than the one who had more points at the end of the third quarter is the team who wins. I find this extraordinary. I would like to hear your opinion in a second, but let me tell you why. Because I think what I hate is when you have regular basketball game and in the last 40 seconds, the game is broke down in pieces because they have to foul the opponent to get the ball back. Most of the time, this creates a huge waste of time because then they throw free throws and it takes forever. You never know when the game is going to end. But also, I think that there's another aspect that this creates a lot of pressure on the refs. I have never ref. I'm not a referee, but I think that, I mean, try to think of it. If you're a ref and you know that the player you're looking at is going to intentionally foul the opponent because he has to stop the clock, what are you going to do? You're going to be probably overreacting. You're gonna wonder, is that a flagrant foul or just a regular foul? So I think that that situation is very unpleasant. All over to you for your opinion on elam
Yeah.
endings.
I also want to say that I love that idea. When it comes to this elam ending, the only issue I have, if it can be called an issue, is that when you have garbage time, that's a good chance for players who you want to develop to enter the court. So here, there's nothing like that. But then again, the rosters are smaller. So in a league like that, that works. But if you have a system in which you have to play more games and you're responsible, let's call it responsibility, for younger players who need playing time, that may be actually counterintuitive to what you want to do. But still, to your point, this translates to exciting games, and also you avoid fans leaving earlier, which has been an issue. Like, I'm a Miami Heat fan, and the fans of the Heat, especially during the LeBron years, they would, I don't know if you remember, but they would like leave sometimes in the third quarter, late third, in the fourth quarter, because they no longer wanted to like watch the game because those were such blowouts that fans weren't actually interested. But here, you need to stay in your seat and watch, which is great. And so there's actually not more I can say apart from the fact that it's true to the essence of what Unrivaled is supposed to be, meaning it's supposed to be like playground basketball. So this is actually playground basketball at its finest, and I love it as well.
And in this case, FIBA 3-on-3 basketball actually applies the same rule. You have to reach 21 points. So it's not something totally American here.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's a 2 point difference in both, if I remember correctly. Or is it in Unrivaled?
No, it's
In
as you see, it's in FIBA.
It's in FIBA. Okay, sorry. It's in
Maybe
FIBA. Yeah,
both, but FIBA for sure.
for FIBA for sure. Yeah, I don't remember what Unrivaled, but I think there. I think there was supposed to be like a difference. So yeah, that's also a good thing, right? Because still, it reminds me more of a tennis match where you need to have that difference, and you get additional, well, additional competition to watch, which is also great because
And
you
let
never
me add
know. Yeah.
something, personal experience. So I was at the arena last summer for the final series of the Italian Championship. The game was, of course, Milan against Bologna, as most of the time it is here in Italy for the final series. And I remember that Milan was winning by 2 points, if I remember well.
Mhm.
And the ref gave ball possession after a play that was not very clear. It was not very clear who touched the ball last. The ref gave ball possession to Milan, and they talked about it. There was such a big controversy. They talked about it for like weeks. And the funny thing is that the remaining time was 1.6 seconds. So your reaction would be, are you for real? What are you gonna do in 1.6 seconds? Are you gonna catch and shoot from the midfield? Of course, nothing of the sort can happen in real world basketball. But with elam ending, that wouldn't have been a case at all because you the problem of how much time left you have wouldn't even exist. It would just be a matter of reaching a certain score. So they could have played their defense and then see how the game would have developed. So I think that target score endings would be a great change for the world of basketball, but also a good one.
Yeah, yeah, because you're not killing time when you're playing basketball. Like, every possession matters and every play matters, which is great. Yeah, so totally, I totally agree with you here.
Look, you showed your book about three pointers, and I
Yeah.
think that so being you an expert in the history of three-point shooting, that let's remind everybody that it was not even an NBA creation, but an ABA creation, the American Basketball Association, the one who used to play with blue, white, and red, the ball.
Yeah.
That was so nice to see. And one interesting thing we have in Big Three is the 4 points shooting. And actually, Big Three is not the first league to introduce 4 point baskets. But the other ones, for instance, the Philippines, and you can watch games on YouTube and see how it works, have an extra arc behind the arc. And if you shoot from behind that, your basket is gonna be worth 4 points. While in the Big Three, you have three black circles in different zones of the field. And actually, the rule here is reverse. If you have like one tip of your shoe touching the border of that circle, your shoot is gonna be a 4 pointer. I don't know. I don't have a clear idea here. The only thing I would say is that uh, I'm not a big fan of 3 point shooting today, in which all plays end with a 3 point shot, because I like more the 90s basketball, which was much more physical and under the boards. So I think that the misuse of 3 pointers is kind of ruining the game. I'm not saying maybe ruining is a bit harsh, but making it not as good as it was. And so I'm totally against the Philippine rule with an extra arc. I'm totally against that. But as Big Three does, probably there's some, probably it makes some sense. What are your thoughts?
That's interesting. Just wanted to return to what you said about the 3 point shot because there was this guy. I have this book by Howard Hobson, a basketball coach. I'm just gonna check when it was published to not.
Sure.
Okay, flip pages. 1949.
Okay.
Howard Hobson is the guy who came up with the 3 point shot. So that's an awesome book to read, by the way. And he introduced like a division of the basketball court into three zones. When you had 12 feet from the basket, 1 point. 24 feet, 2 points, and then 24 to half court, you had the 3 point shot. And he introduced that division as the first guy. Then the ABL picked it up in 1961, and then obviously ABA, right? So Abe Saperstein was, and Bill Sharman, the Celtics legend, and then a great Lakers coach, they implemented it in 1961. So for historical clarity, that's just the historian in me. So, but when it comes to the 4 point shot, it's interesting because as so you're against, right? Completely.
With an extra arc,
The
yes. As Big Three does, I'm ambivalent.
Okay. Yeah, same. Because the reason for like inventing the 3 point line wasn't only uh to shoot as many threes as players tend to shoot now, but it was to just space the game more and stop players from crowding underneath the basket. When we look at the history of like introducing basketball rules, it's the game has always moved away from the basket. When we think about players like George Mikan, who was the reason why we have the goaltending rule because he used to stand underneath the basket and block shots. And then we have Will Chamberlain. So he was so dominant, they actually introduced like the, how do you call it in English? Jesus. Uh, the space underneath the basket that's colored.
The key.
The key. Okay. Thanks for that. It's late. So the key was introduced because of Will Chamberlain, and the 3 second violation later was introduced because players in the middle were still too dominant. So the reason for introducing the 3 point line was to give shorter guys such as us a chance to score, right? To participate in the game. So I don't see any reasoning for the 4 point line to be introduced because it doesn't stretch the game. It's just I I want to be a bit careful here, but the word gimmick sort of
Mhm.
fits here. And when it comes to the big three, I'm ambivalent as well. like I don't know if it's a good idea, if it's a bad idea. Like I'm not totally convinced, but I'm also not against it. So yeah,
I would
same as you.
add one detail because if you have that kind of shot, the 4 pointer, with a clock countdown clock or an elam ending, that would be totally different. Because imagine a situation in which a team is losing by 4 points and you have 5 extra seconds to play. What are the defenders going to do? They're going to just defend and protect that black circle, and it doesn't make sense. It would be ridiculous.
That's true. That's true. That's a very good point. Yeah.
So I think that to avoid making it ridiculous, I think that 4 pointers can only work if they introduce elam ending first.
Yeah. That's a solid point. I totally agree with that as well. Yeah.
And another thing that we have in both leagues, in both the Unrivaled and BIG3, is the single free throw, meaning that if you're fouled while shooting, you only get one free throw that is worth as many points as the shot that was fouled in the first place. I don't know. I'm ambivalent here as well. I would say I'm generally against it because I think that it would be too rewarding for the player to just score one and get as many points that can be 2, 3, or 4 in the BIG3 instead of having to score them all, because most of the times when you're shooting and you get fouled, it doesn't mean that you would have scored your basket if you weren't fouled. I don't know. What are your thoughts here about the single free?
Okay. Okay. So I'm interested because you're wearing a Lakers hoodie, and there was a guy on the Lakers, Shaquille O'Neal, right?
Yeah,
Remember in the 90s, Hack a Shaq,
yeah,
how it slowed down the game?
yeah.
So maybe should I explain what it was? Basically, Shaquille O'Neal was
Go
so
ahead.
dominant underneath the basket that other teams preferred to foul him rather than allow him to shoot. And because of the fact that he was, I think, 50% sort of
Yeah.
free throw shooter, they preferred to take their chances at the line. And it slowed down the game, like for me, from my perspective as a fan. And I think that we wouldn't have that if uh, and we wouldn't have other such blatant fouls if one free throw counted as 2 points. So I think that's an interesting thing to look into, and I kind of actually like it. I know that it's kind of unfair because it doesn't guarantee that when a player fires a shot, then that shot would be made. But at the same time, if you're fouling that player, you're fouling him or her for a reason. So I'm kind of more on. I actually like that idea.
Okay. Yes. I don't know. Yeah, I get your point. And the funny thing about Shaquille O'Neal is that he was a terrible free throws
Yeah,
shooter, but at the same time, I think that for 2 seasons in a row, he was like the best shooter as far as percentages of field
field
throws
goal
because
percentage. Yeah,
goal percentage, not because he had good hands and he was good at jump shots, but because he was so dominant under the boards
hmm
that he just had to put the ball inside of the basket. And yeah, I do remember. I do remember that. I do remember it slowing down the pace of the game. And that's definitely a good point that you're making as far as time saving.
yeah,
At,
yeah.
at
Because
least,
yeah, I'm sorry because you were. That's the thing when we think about times. And I'm sorry for my dog. It's her time to sing. Usually she sings from like 9 until 10. Then she goes to sleep. But the thing that we were talking about, so time, uh, endings of games when teams are blatantly fouling each other,
yeah,
it doesn't make for a good watching experience. And remember back when endings of basketball games used to be shorter? Now
yeah.
they're like so long when the score is close because or when one team is trailing and the others are chasing the score. There's like 5 point difference, something like that, and you're watching like foul after foul after foul and free throws. It doesn't make for a pleasant watching experience. So maybe it's a good direction introducing those like one free throw instead of two. I don't know.
Well, let me get to the next point that I was thinking of. So one thing I totally dislike about the NBA is defense. And it's not because players are lazy, but because rules are, in my opinion, pretty strict. Because we have, you cannot hand check. And this is, well, new by my standards. I mean, till 94 or 93, it was allowed. And we have this crazy rule of defensive 3 seconds violations. Okay, none of that exists in Big Three. And I do think that that big three is totally right here, and I'm 100% with them because defenses are getting lame in today's NBA, and it's not because players are lazy or because they just want to show off how good they are at offense, but because these are the rules. And if you think about it, in the Olympics last year, what I saw was that they were not even very good at rebounding because they were not used they were not used at defending. They were not
Yeah.
playing hard defense. Of course, they had no problem scoring, but I remember the Americans being always in the wrong position when they had to rebound. And I remember being mad at them and even sending a message to a friend of mine saying, "Hey, do you know if Dennis Rodman is still playing? Because he will be great in this team. I mean, they don't know how to rebound." So I think that putting some more interest in defense by allowing hand check and removing this crazy idea of 3 seconds violation would be a great improvement for the league. We cannot talk about FIBA here because FIBA doesn't have this delirious rules. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well because you mentioned earlier Gary Payton. What
Yeah,
did we know Gary Payton for? Great defense.
great defense.
Probably the only point guard who won the Defensive Player of the Year award. I hope I'm not mistaken here. I think he was the only one. And after those rules were changed and so sort of offense was favored, it kind of well, it made the games less enjoyable. I totally agree with that. And if I may make a parallel, it's the same thing. I have an issue with penalty shootouts
Yeah.
when like they favor the shooter even more. Like if you stood in a goal and tried to save a penalty, it's extremely hard. The goal is so big when you're a goalkeeper, and there are still so many restrictions put on you already, even before like you're banned from like crossing the line before the player touches the ball. It's unfair, and we have the same thing with hand checking. Like smaller players are favored on offense, but on defense they don't have a chance to be as good. And I'm thinking about guys like Gary Payton, but I'm also thinking about guys like Scottie Pippen, who was such a great defender, and he had long hands and he could use his hands. And now he would be he would be sort of an average defender at
Yeah.
best. So I totally agree with that. That hand checking, I think, needs to, it has to go.
Well, and one thing that I remember other than the Olympics last year was in September, the FIBA International Cup, where the G League representative lost to Malaga, basically because they didn't know how to play defense on pick and rolls. And I remember watching a video with an explanation. They said that the reason was that the NBA field was wider. Therefore, when they play pick and roll in the NBA, actually, both the guard and the power forward usually have much more space to move
Mm.
around. While in FIBA basketball, you just go for the basket. And but I think that that's probably correct. But I think that NBA rules are too harsh on defense, and actually, it's not even good for show because people want to see players play defense. It's not just it's not catch and shoot. This is basketball.
Yeah. And you see taken to an extreme when you're watching all-star games. Like
Yeah.
To be honest, I can't remember the last All-Star game that I watched in whole. Like it was probably, I don't know, the beginning of the century,
Yeah.
one of those games, because I mean, apart from the fact that athletes don't care and they don't want to hurt themselves, like the defense themselves, when you think about the great All-Star games, when you think about the freeze out, right, in the 1980s, when supposedly Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas conspired to freeze out Michael Jordan in his first All-Star game. If the, in today's rules, this wouldn't happen. Like Jordan would score with ease in the All-Star game. Like I'm not one of those people who's gonna say that Jordan would score 50 a game in if the present rules apply. Like I don't believe in that. But in All-Star games, um I don't know. It's just they aren't enjoyable anymore because they don't play no defense. And in regular games, it's really hard to come up with defensive schemes. You have guys like Eric Spoelstra, who's a defensive mastermind, and even he has issues with like playing the defense in the confines that the NBA imposes on coaches and players. So I'm not a fan of those rules as well. Plus, you have the referees in the NBA are an issue as well. Guys like Scott Foster, right, who are sort of the star of the show.
Yeah.
That's also a problem. Like the NBA has a refereeing problem, and it had a and it's been having a refereeing problem for some time now.
Well, EuroLeague as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But obviously, in the NBA, it has a bigger magnitude because of the fact that more eyes are on the NBA, right? So that's a problem as well.
I think that you would be also against, and I'm totally with you as well, with lowering the shot clock from 24 to anything else. Like in Unrivaled, they have 12 seconds, and I think that it's a bit too much to have that few seconds because actually, as you mentioned, they cannot play defense because they don't even have time to go back in their half court to match up with the other players. I mean, that's the only thing I dislike about Unrivaled.
Yeah, yeah. Even though the court is smaller, like 18 seconds to, I think it's 18. You said 12?
Okay,
I think it's 18.
I might be wrong. I might be wrong.
I
Okay.
think it's 18, which is still not a lot. I mean, yes, we want to see a fast-paced game, but similarly, if you want to play playground style basketball, you want to copy playground style basketball, make it playground style basketball. Like we were sort of raised in the same time. You've seen end one basketball,
Yeah.
right? And me as well. Were those games entertaining? Um, Highlights weren't entertaining, but the games weren't all that entertaining, right? Probably when you saw them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so it's sort of, well, you have to make those decisions whether you want to stick to the rules or whether you want to make it like a free for all and just accessible, well, not accessible, but entertaining for people who don't really care about basketball on a daily basis. So it's one of those things where I I don't know about the shot clock. Obviously, we need a shot clock, right? But
We
as
need a
you've
shot.
said, 18 is not a lot.
No,
Yeah,
that's the extreme. That's the
yeah,
extreme.
that's a bit extreme.
Well, Lukasz, many thanks for your time again. I think that we had an interesting conversation, and the funny thing is that we this was not staged, but we agreed on all points in the end.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Because maybe we're of the same generation, more or less. So we were raised on a different type of basketball. But still, I like the fact that you, just as me, we're a bit open when it comes to those ideas. We're not conservative and we're not too progressive. So we're somewhere in the middle, which is, I think, the proper way to go, right?
Yeah, let's evaluate things and then give our opinions. So I hope Adam Silver watches this video, so that maybe, and if Adam, if you're watching this and you want us to come over and consult from you, we are definitely willing to come to the US and give you some suggestions. And I
Yeah,
don't think Adam Silver is watching this.
for a reasonable salary as well.
Of course, and he has to
Yeah.
also to pay for the plane and the hotels.
Of course. And for the beverages as well.
Yeah,
A lot of
absolutely.
beverages will be necessary. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we reached the end of our discussion, and I think that it was at least interesting to share ideas with each other and with everybody else who's watching this. So thank you to all my viewers who are watching this, and see you all in my next episode. Bye-bye.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to talk to you again. Bye.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.